And tonight, at a minimum,
Thank you.
Tonight, at a minimum,
I feel so
the
much better
Guardians
now.
game is on WKYC. They are taking on I would call them the Twins, but I'm not quite sure who the hell is going to be in their lineup tonight. They just traded basically their entire lineup, their entire pitching staff. It is a good pitching matchup tonight for what it's worth. But the Guardians-Twins
we can't lose to these guys.
On WKYC. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. right here on WKYC. We're also on WKYC coming up in 25 minutes. But before we do that,
who is pitching tonight?
We are thrilled to welcome
What is the matchup tonight? You said it's a good pitching matchup. When I looked at it, I didn't think it was.
Gavin versus Joe Ryan.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's like the only pitcher they kept. So that is tonight. But with that, we are thrilled to bring in Justin Lada, the host of the Locked On Guardians podcast, now to talk a little baseball, trade deadline, and some prospects, because that's something Justin specializes in the couple weeks after the MLB draft. How you doing today, Justin?
Doing good. Trying to recover after that busy couple of hours.
Can you remember a more wild trading deadline than this year? It was bananas.
It was wild. I mean, I've had other wild trade deadlines, but the fact that everything happened in like the last, 6 to 8 hours, and especially the last couple of hours, was remarkable. I mean, 34 trades in the last 6 hours of the deadline.
And did I read this right? There were 40 relievers moved? 40?
It was a lot.
I think it was this morning, I read there were 40 relievers moved. And we were talking, obviously, about the whole Emmanuel Clase debacle. He most certainly would have been moved.
Oh, yeah.
Because obviously that was the position that teams felt like they needed to go after to bolster their squads. Overall, Justin, and you can include the trades not made and the trades made, what grade do you give the Guardians for their deadline moves? And just kind of give us your quick thoughts on what they did.
Oh, grade's kind of tough. I mean, I almost want to give them an incomplete because, you didn't have a chance to see what the value was going to be for Emmanuel Clase. It sounded like they were pretty wishy-washy on whether or not they wanted to trade him or if they felt they could. And then obviously they had to be pulled out of any possible trades because they knew that he was going to be investigated and put on the restricted list. I guess if you want to put a grade on the trades they didn't made, it's going to be a C+. Like, I like the prospect they got, Cal Steven, for Shane Bieber, but you didn't have the chance to really explore Clase's value on the market, and they weren't able to trade, guys like Carlos Santana. They weren't able to trade any other relievers that they had, and you didn't really move Steven Kwan, which I'm okay with. I don't think it made sense to move Steven Kwan for the packages that they were receiving anyway.
Do you know what I guess it came down at the end anyhow, because I know there were more teams that were at least inquiring about him 2 or 3 days out. But in the furious last few hours, we were hearing the Padres, we were hearing the Mets, the Dodgers, and the Blue Jays. Do you know what any of those teams were said to be offering? We felt it would be 2 high-level prospects and maybe a plug-and-play guy, but that might have been the asking price. Did anybody come close that you know of?
The Guardians, I know, exchanged a lot of names, or at least did a lot of background research on Blue Jays and Phillies. So I'm not really sure what names they were involved in terms of what the Guardians were going to send. But the names I was reading, or at least I was hearing from those 2 teams, suggested we were talking about probably a Kwan or somebody else. Definitely Shane Bieber, obviously, because that happened. I don't know that the names that I heard for the Blue Jays and the Phillies made a lot of sense for Clase, but probably for Kwan, maybe other pieces. The Dodgers were extremely silent. I'm sure they had conversations, but that was a very quiet one. And then we know the names that came out for the Padres discussion was Leo DeVry, who ended up going to the Athletics in the Mason Miller deal. So the Guardians set a very high price on Kwan, deservedly so, and I think it made sense for them to do that because they didn't necessarily want to center their package around an 18-year-old shortstop. Like, if you're going to trade Steven Kwan, you have to get a guy who is plug and play right now, and you also have to get help for the future. I don't think it made sense to center a trade around somebody who is 2, 3, 4 years away.
Justin, I talked to Jason and Jay, and I said, look, and Jay kind of said, listen, he's a 4 out of 5 tool player, but he's missing the most impactful tool, which is to be a home run hitter or the power numbers. In your assessment, what is his value on the open market? What is the dollar amount? I mean, where would he kind of rank in the pecking order of somebody, and how much would the team pay for a guy who's really good, is an all-star, but people think he may not be an MVP type difference maker.
Yeah, it's a challenging market for sure because he plays a non-premium position. Now, he plays obviously fantastic defense at a non-premium position, gets on base, and does have a little bit of slug, not a ton, but sets the table really well. I worry for him, especially for Cleveland. We're talking extensions. I know everybody wants to extend Stephen Kwan and stay longer, but I worry for him is like he's had the hamstring issues. He had the wrist issue this year. Guys with his size don't necessarily age the best. So, like you saw Andrew Benintendi, who arguably was a better prospect than Stephen Kwan. I mean, Stephen Kwan didn't make a lot of top 100 lists. And Andrew Benintendi was on a lot of top 100 lists. He got, 70 or 60 or 70 million from the White Sox, and he is not good anymore. Like, that's just a skill set that's really tough to figure out how it's going to age into his mid-30s. So I'm guessing he's going to want something north of 100 million, and I don't know that the Guardians are going to go there. And I don't blame them for not doing that based on how they're forced to operate. Now, if you operate with a higher payroll, and you could say, well, we could take that risk. That's great. I'd be all for that. But if you realistically look at it in the payroll area they operate, it's a big risk to take.
What did you think of the Bieber trade, and what do you think of Cal Steven?
Yeah, it's definitely disappointing that you don't get to see Shane Bieber one more time on the mound for the Guardians, right? Because in an ideal world, Shane Bieber comes back, and he's part of this rotation. He's part of this team, and you're making a push to the playoffs. But performance and injuries and suspensions played a role in the fact that he wasn't able to be part of that. You can also go back to the offseason and say, well, they didn't give themselves enough cover to be in a position to be better than they were or be as good as they were a year ago. But given the circumstances they're in, I think they did a really good job maximizing his value. You paid Shane Bieber, $7 million this year to rehab him.
I thought it was more than that. Wasn't it a one?
10, but 10 million was the deal, but the like 7.
Oh, I thought it was 14 million for year one and 16 for year two if he picked up the option. I could be wrong on my numbers.
I think it was 10 for this year, right, Justin? I think 10 this year, 16 next year, and a $4 million buyout next year.
Oh, that's where the other
$16 million.
Okay, and well,
so
essentially you paid that money
paid
for Cal
year.
Steven, is what you did.
Yeah.
Essentially, yeah. And Cal Steven's a better prospect than what they would have gotten if they kept Bieber and put a qualifying offer on him, which, let's be honest, they have not really used the qualifying offer. Go back to Michael Brantley. They didn't want to give it to him. I think Carlos Santana is the last guy they put a qualifying offer on. Wow. So I don't think they were going to do that. So Cal Steven gives you a much better prospect than you were going to get, even if you did do that. This is a guy I think immediately is the best pitching prospect in the organization. And I say that as somebody who likes a couple of their pitching prospects. But somebody who potentially could contribute as soon as next year. So I think they did a good job taking a guy who hasn't pitched all year for the big league team and really hasn't had a fully healthy season since 2022. And you've got a guy who's a universal, I think, top 100 pitcher or prospect across baseball.
For those that are asking this question, what is the concern on injury? Because you mentioned that he hasn't had a full season. He's injured now, correct?
Oh, if we're talking Cal Steven, I meant Bieber hasn't pitched since 2022. But yeah, Cal Steven was part of the 2024 draft class, and he pitched a little bit last year, I think. But this year, he went on the IL last week with the shoulder impingement. But everybody I talked to, including the Guardian, said that they don't consider this to be a serious injury. Good. That I think he's going to Arizona to finish off his rehab, and I would expect him to pitch in Akron sometime in the month of August.
Well, and you would even think if by some chance that the Guardians do hang around and are in that hunt for a wild card, it's possible we could see him in September.
Cal Steven, no, probably not. I don't think he's going to be a guy that you turn to in September. I mean, this organization right now doesn't really need rotation help because you traded Shane Bieber, obviously, because it makes sense to hang on to him, but the rotation's found its footing. Like Tanner Bybee, I still think is going to be fine, even though it's been kind of an up and down season. Gavin Williams has been great lately.
Yeah.
Logan Allen's been
tremendous lately.
Yeah, Slade Cicconi's been great. And then you also have guys like Parker Messick in AAA who's ready to contribute. And I don't know what's going to happen with this, but remember, you still have John Means who's out in Arizona, and they expect him to be maybe a potential reinforcement this month or in September. So I don't think you even need Cal Steven this year.
Real quick, let's wrap with just their draft this year. We were talking earlier in the show, it felt like a pivot in how they are approaching hitting and going more toward guys who can hit the ball out of the ballpark. What are your thoughts on Lavalette and just in general the guys that they drafted this year?
I don't think they did a full pivot because Lavalette and Nolan Schubart represent the guys that can hit the ball to the ballpark, but guys like Dean Curley and Aaron Walton and Luke Hill, those are kind of their typical usual pass guys. So I don't think it was a full departure. It was just trying to balance out what was available in a very weak draft class and what was on the board at the time, and trying to they always take gambles in the first round. Like, go back, Daniel Espino, Gavin Williams were all risks. Chase DeLauter was a risk because he was hurt in college too. Like, they take gambles in the first round, and it doesn't always work out for them. Jace Lavalette, a lot of power, interesting player. Obviously, not a kind of player they have in their system currently. I give them credit for trying to do something different because what they've been doing hasn't worked, and they needed to diversify their tools in the system because they didn't even have tools in their system they can trade. Like, that's been the problem. They don't have guys with big power like Lavalette or guys with 70 grade tools that no other teams want to trade for. So I give him credit for that. But Lavalette, I'm a little bit concerned because that strikeout rate in college does not translate well to the majors. There are not a lot of examples that work well in the majors, and they just haven't really developed a lot of hitters. So do you think this is a guy they can realistically develop? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a concern. One final thing on the overall trade deadline winners and losers. I love what Seattle did. I love what San Diego did. I am aghast at what Minnesota did. What's your takeaway across the league?
Yeah, it was a weird deadline. I mean, obviously the Padres bullpen is completely insane right now. The Mariners did a good job getting a couple of hitters. They added a reliever too, so I think they're good. The Angels were strangely buyers, which I never understand. What stood out to me is what little the Tigers and the Cubs did. I mean, the Tigers got Paul Sewald from Cleveland, who can't pitch till September, Charlie Morton, and I'm trying to think of who else they got, but it was a pretty weak deadline for the Tigers overall. And then the Red Sox, did almost nothing. And then the Cubs, who are in a fantastic position, went out and added a guy who's a sixth starter and then a reliever, and then Willie Castro, who's an ex-Guardians prospect. But a lot of inactivity from teams I thought were really at the top of their division, had a real strong chance, and then ended up not doing a whole lot.
Yeah, it's mostly the chasers that were active this trade deadline, and those that are sitting in pretty good spots felt that they like their team. They've got 110 games or whatever in the barn, and they know what they have, and they like what they have. It's going to be a great – I can't wait for September and October. In the American League, so many teams are involved for the wild card, including the Guardians. It's going to be fun to see those that separate themselves from the pack. Should be in for a great September and hopefully a good October too. Justin, thanks. We appreciate you coming on.
Appreciate it.
Always enjoy it, guys. Thank you.